My grandma stole my inheritance to save herself, so I made sure she paid for it. When my parents passed away, I didn't just lose my family. I lost the life they worked so hard to give me. But when I found out my grandma had stolen my inheritance, I wasn't just going to let her get away with it. I made sure she felt every penny of that betrayal. I was 23 when my parents died in a car crash. They had always been meticulous planners, and their will ensured I'd be taken care of. The lawyer explained that I was set to inherit enough to finish college, pay off my modest student loans, and even put a down payment on a house someday. It wasn't millions, but it was everything to me. But there was a catch. My inheritance would be managed by my grandmother until I turned 25. She was supposed to act in my best interest. Grandma had always been difficult. She criticized my mom constantly when she was alive and treated my dad, her son, like he was still a little boy who couldn't do anything right. I had always kept my distance, but with my parents gone, I figured we'd just have to make it work. For a while, it seemed like we were doing okay. She kept up the appearance of a loving, grieving grandmother. She even helped me with some expenses during my last year of school. But when I graduated and asked to see the account holding my inheritance, her tone changed. "I've been taking care of everything, dear. Don't stress about it," she said, waving me off. Every time I brought it up after that, she'd find an excuse to avoid the conversation. Alarm bells started ringing, but I didn't want to believe my own grandmother would do anything shady with my parents' money. That all changed when I got a call from the bank a few months later. They were reviewing the account because of unusual activity. I was confused. It wasn't like I'd been withdrawing money, but when I dug deeper, the truth hit me like a truck. The account was empty, not just low, empty. I confronted Grandma the next day. She acted surprised at first, then defensive, and finally she crumbled under pressure. She admitted she'd used the money to pay off her second mortgage and settle some urgent debts. Apparently she'd been gambling for years and her finances were a mess. She told me she'd planned to replace the money before I turned 25, but things got out of hand. I couldn't even speak. This wasn't just some mistake. It was theft. She had stolen my future to fix her own selfish mistakes. I didn't scream or cry in that moment. I just stood up, walked out of her house, and went straight to my parents' lawyer. He was livid when I told him what happened. "She's committed fraud, and we can press charges," he said. But he also warned me that suing her could take years and might not result in me getting the money back. That's when I came up with a plan to make her life as uncomfortable as she'd made mine. First, I reported her to the authorities for mismanaging the inheritance. She was slapped with a formal investigation, which meant constant visits from lawyers and auditors. Her perfect image as a sweet old lady began to crack under the strain. Next, I informed the rest of our family about what she'd done. Grandma always loved playing the matriarch, holding family gatherings and dishing out advice like some benevolent ruler. But once everyone learned the truth, they stopped speaking to her. Her phone calls went unanswered, and she was no longer invited to any family events. But the pièce de résistance was when I found out she'd taken out a reverse mortgage on her house to cover even more debts. I tipped off the company about her legal troubles and financial mismanagement. Within months, they foreclosed on her house. She had to sell most of her possessions just to stay afloat. And me? I took the little money I had left and rebuilt my life from scratch. I moved to a cheaper city, found a job, and slowly started putting my own finances back together. It was hard, but knowing Grandma was feeling the consequences of her actions made it a little easier. The last time I saw her, she was living in a tiny run-down apartment. She asked me if I could forgive her, tears streaming down her face. I told her I might someday. But not today. You don't steal from family, and if you do, you'd better be ready to pay for it.